The top 3 accountability mistakes are unclear expectations, a lack of candid conversations, and lack of consequences. Let's talk about number 1, unclear expectations. When we're holding somebody accountable, we're going to have to hold them accountable to something. And the clearer that to something is, the easier it is for everybody to understand, the easier it is to hold people accountable to it. And it's helpful for them, isn't it? Isn't it helpful to know what's expected of you? At least you now know. It gives you a better chance of delivering it, doesn't it? A classic example of doing this wrong is when you ask somebody to do something and you don't specify when you want it. So I say, hey Matt, could you get that report done for me? And Matt says, yeah, sure Tom, not a problem, I'll get onto it. And a few days go by and I'm like, oh Matt, have you got that report done? Matt says, oh, sorry, I haven't got onto it yet, I'll do it. And then maybe a few days goes by and a weekend and I'm starting to get a bit frustrated. Hey Matt, I need that report. I wasn't clear in the outset when I needed it. How often are we frustrated because we didn't ask for something and then we're frustrated because we didn't get it? It's really unhelpful. This is just one small example of being unclear. Another really good example of being clear is really good training. So for example, if we train managers really well in accountability, then they're more accountable for doing that well because they've been trained in it. So because it's clearer, the standard of that is clearer. Therefore, it's easier to hold people accountable to it. So the better our training is, the more accountable people are, assuming that we hold them accountable to using it, of course. So number 2 is a lack of candid conversations. So let's just think for a minute, why would somebody avoid a conversation? They'd avoid a conversation because they're afraid. Why are they afraid? What are they afraid of? They're actually afraid of the other person's emotionally withdrawing from them, right? So I'm afraid of the disconnection, the emotional disconnection. And I'm afraid, if they respond defensively, I'm going to interpret that as an emotional disconnection. And that's the bit that I'm afraid of. So what's the other person afraid of? Well, if they're responding defensively, then that's a fear-based response. If they weren't afraid, they wouldn't need to protect themselves. They wouldn't need to defend themselves. So now I've got 2 people who are afraid. Is it any wonder that we don't end up having the conversation and we just avoid the conversation, we avoid the issue? And it's really unhelpful. A trust-based environment rather than a fear-based environment is one where we'll have the conversation. And we know, we've been taught how to structure this conversation in a way that significantly reduces the risk of the other person responding defensively. The problem is that once they respond defensively, because it's a fear-based response, they've basically started to get triggered into fear. Then the further they go into that fear-based response, they can't hear you anymore. They lose the ability to process information as the fear sort of starts to shut down the brain. So it's really important that managers know how to structure the conversation to significantly reduce the risk of that happening. And number 3, a lack of consequences. If I can keep behaving in a certain way that's unproductive, or just keep doing the same thing maybe my manager's challenged me on it, but I just keep behaving in the same way, and there's no real consequences for that, then I'm not really accountable. And I'm not really talking about formal consequences. There are loads of tools that we can give managers to create some level of pattern interrupt, some level of consequence that just turns the volume up, that just helps people realise that you can't get away with that here. And ultimately, maybe that does lead to some kind of formal action, but there's loads of stuff we can do way before then to try and prevent us getting there, to address the issue and to help this person to perform at a higher level, because that's the best thing for them often, right? We don't help people if we allow them to just remain in patterns of unhelpful behaviour. So there you have it. They're the top 3 accountability mistakes. You can check out some other videos that we've got on accountability, and I hope you have a great day.